Welcome to SKNIS Perspectives, an interactive program of the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, aired weekly on this radio station.
On today's edition, we present an interview from our Ministries in Focus series. The Minister responsible for technology, Honorable Glenn Phillip, is our guest today, and he discusses several important matters, including the closure of the ICT Center, the expansion of the one-to-one laptop initiative, and the rollout of the Education Network. I'm Ian Richards. Perspectives begins right now. Minister Glenn Phillips, thank you very much for agreeing to be a part of our series Ministries in Focus. And we want to get right into it. We are aware, of course, that ICT, which is Information and Communication Technology, is one of the pillars of the new economy in St. Kitts and Nevis. We've heard the Prime Minister speak about that a lot. You can say that the home of ICT in St. Kitts and Nevis would be the ICT Center. It has been closed for some time now. What can you tell us about that?
The ICT Center was closed because there was a leak that created a proliferation of mold. And we felt that the safety of our employees and the safety of our clients were paramount. And so we had to close the ICT Center. In the meantime, we have been relocated on the top floor of the cable building. But apart from that, let me say that work has been started. As a matter of fact, the Public Works have done their assessment, and they're looking at the most suitable and permanent solution that could be had of the ICT Center.
So is there any specific timeline as to when it will reopen?
Well, we're looking at sometime this year.
Okay.
Like I said, we have to revamp the entire roof. That is one of the recommendations. There are several recommendations that was made. We have to find the most suitable.
Okay. Now, the ICT Center, of course, has a reputation for being the training hub for ICT here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And when it first opened, it had an impressive record of training persons, locals, of course, in software such as Microsoft Word and Excel. But more so, under your leadership, it took on a more specialized training in the sense that we saw like webmaster training and stuff. Tell us a bit about that strategy.
Well, when it started first, we can say we were in the introductory stage of teaching persons beginners courses, Excel, Word, etc. However, the needs of the Federation at this time in terms of our people is more intense. And what we're trying to achieve, and you mentioned webmasters, also mobile apps. These are things that we think the future of our people and also part of the entrepreneurial spirit going forward in terms of people acquiring certain jobs and being a pillar of ICT development within the Federation and the world over.
And Minister, of course, it's important that young persons get involved in ICT technology, and we saw the introduction, of course, of the one-to-one laptop project, whereby every high school student is given a laptop to use. How would you say that has been progressing?
I think it has been progressing quite nicely. I must say also, not because I said quite nicely, we also have our faults. It's the first time we have introduced it. And so in hindsight, yes, we have made some errors. However, they're not insurmountable, that cannot be corrected. What we have done also in terms of the laptop program is that we have instituted what we call an educational network, or EduNet. This network will interconnect all of our high schools, all our secondary high schools within the Federation, including Nevis. So they have their own network, so when the student goes to school, now he has access, no matter where he or she is on campus, they would have access to the internet and also higher learning and be able to research at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Well, speak specifically about EduNet because I understand that there are some specific benefits that have to be derived. You just hinted at some of them, but I know an exciting prospect would be, say, the teleconferencing that would allow students to link with each other across schools.
Well, it's not just teleconferencing. You have web conferencing and all those different features. Just think about it from this standpoint that if a teacher is absent, let's suppose in Virtuals High, a math teacher, maybe you can get a math teacher from Sandy Point High or wherever in the Federation to teach a class using some of the solutions that are based on the EduNet.
So the EduNet basically, as you mentioned, it provides Wi-Fi coverage to the schools.
Yes.
How does that work when a student leaves the school?
Well, because the network is basically on school grounds, then they would lose coverage. What we're negotiating at this point in time, though, with a couple of the providers here, that we can install what we call dongles, especially now that we have realized there's a move to 4G, next generation solution here on the island. What we're trying to do at this point is to negotiate with the relevant providers so that they can provide dongles for those students who do not have internet at their home to be able to have access during the time they're home so that they can do their homework.
And just for those who may not be tech savvy, explain what a dongle is.
A dongle is just a transmitter which will help you to acquire wireless signals.
And so when can we expect to see the EduNet up and running?
We're in the last stage of verification. We have to make sure that what we wanted as government in terms of the network is what we got. So we're doing verification, and we're in the last stage of verification, and we're looking at the next semester after the holidays that the network will be launched.
So basically after the Easter break, after the students will have.
Yes.
Okay. And of course, Minister, chief concern that persons would have, of course, is the type of access. The websites, that is, that some of the students may have to. Is that built in? There are safeguards built in to ensure that students use the laptops and the Wi-Fi, the EduNet aspect of the Wi-Fi, in the productive way that it is meant?
Well, yes, and we have to be careful also, in terms of filtering, because I do not want to go too technical, of course, but in terms of sometimes when you filter or try to filter out some sites, then you affect legitimate sites at times based on the code in which they have been written. And so these are things that we're looking at. Of course, they will be filtered. A matter of fact, one of the school of thought also is to look at some of those, what we call bandwidth hogs, maybe some of the social media sites. If we are going to restrict those, decisions have not been made in terms of that. Of course, we have to work with the education department in order to put a policy forward. As the IT department, we do not want to exclude education department. They will have to tell us exactly what they want, and we will implement it.
Minister, as we refer back to the laptop project, the one-to-one laptop project, we mentioned that the students most of them were given their laptops, I think. There are some already acquired for those who are going to be in first form coming up. But what about the teachers?
That's a good question. When we first started with the laptop program, there was a school of thought that we would have distributed to the teachers according to the departments. So we gave out according to the departments within the required schools. We have since changed that policy, and now we're looking to give every single teacher a laptop, and that will be done shortly.
And that's important. Why, in your view?
Well, speaking with education, again, education department and the Minister of Education, Honorable Nigel Carty, one of the things you do not want is that within a specific department, they might have, let's say, 2 or 3 different courses going on at the same time. However, you have 2 laptops that are assigned to those teachers when you have 4 teachers doing something. And so in terms of the preparedness of a text and all those things, I think they would need an individual laptop.
And you referred earlier to the mobile application development workshop, which took place early last year. Remind viewers about that and the success that it had.
I think that it was of great success, especially from the standpoint that this was the first time they've done it. We started with 75 persons. A matter of fact, we had so many persons that we had to cut off, really. However, we're now in negotiating to do a second phase. However, we want to do it more in the high schools. CXC will be introducing an app development program. However, we can't wait here in St. Kitts until CXC. We have to jumpstart that process here, and for our citizens and our students in schools to be able to address those issues and be able to be a part of the development of a more broader solution.
So you would say it's, again, another example of St. Kitts and Nevis leading from the front, so to speak, across the region.
Yes, we have. And ironically, you said that. I remember we developed an app here called Dodge the Potholes. And I went to a meeting, I think it was in Trinidad. And ironically, there was a minister of telecommunications. 6 months after we developed that app here, Senkis boasting that he had done that. They had done that in a different island. Part of our problem, quite frankly, is how we disseminate information. We are doing a lot of good things within the IT department, but sometimes it flies under the radar. And so we are now developing systems how to get that information out.
And certainly a program like this is going to help, and that is why we're so happy to have you. Now, Minister, as we talk about making our people more savvy, we expect to see a generation of more local content. And in order to facilitate that, government acquired an IXP, which is an Internet Exchange Protocol device, and also a DNS router. Explain again for those who may not be tech savvy, basically what those systems are designed to do and how it will assist the government in moving forward its agenda of IT.
Well, in terms of going into the real gymnastics, let me try and explain it as simple as I can. IXP is basically what we call an Internet Exchange Point. And what that is really designed to do is for you to generate more local content and share it among your citizens. Now, as we speak, if I needed to send you an email from where we are sitting, that request has to go to America and come back to you. And if you respond, it goes back to America and comes to me. Now, what IXP will do, instead of going off island, it'll come directly to you. It's very good for national preparedness. God forbid something had to happen in the Americas where those hubs are, then we will definitely face a national crisis, and we will not be able to communicate amongst ourselves. So what this is basically doing, one, it will cut down on some of the costs, because there's a cost for it to go to that information going to the US, so it'll be able to reduce the cost of transacting using the internet. And so these are things that we think that are very important for all, like I said, national preparedness. But not only that, the overall proliferation of ICT development here within the Federation. You could think of it as another issue. For example, let's look at file sharing. People who share music, P2P. If you do a search, let's say for Element, then that request still has to go to America. The search servers outside of St. Kitts. What you'll do now, instead of making that request, going to the Americas, it will do it locally, search locally for that content. If it's not available here locally, then use the other alternative.
And that would help, of course, with security and privacy issues.
Of course, in terms of security, yes, it definitely enhance security.
And the DNS router?
Well, the DNS router is almost similar. We have one. As a matter of fact, we have installed one here late last year, I think. And we have used, I think we're working closely with Packet Clearinghouse. And there was a consultant by the name of Bevel Wooden, who we have worked extremely closely with. As a matter of fact, he is one of the foremost experts in this region within the Caribbean. And so we're working closely to get that done.
Okay. Minister, let's switch gears a bit now and talk a bit about government's strategy of keeping the public informed. You referred earlier to it with regards to helping to disseminate information better. And a large part of it, particularly in communicating with young persons, of course, is the internet. A lot of persons go on the website to seek information. Gov.kn, I think, is a critical part of government strategy in communicating with the public, not just at home, but at abroad as well.
Yes, the fact that we had so many different government institutions having their own website, what we did is created what we call a government portal, so that you bring as many government websites together on one site. And so if you want to, for example, visit Inland Revenue, gone are the days that you have to go on Inland Revenue site, or you want to go to the Prime Minister's office, for example, you have to go on a different site. Now we have all those are consolidated into one site. And so it's easier now for an investor in terms of doing business here in St. Kitts or finding out about the government, what is actually happening in government. Instead of searching the web sporadically, you have this one site that is dedicated for government use to disseminate information, like you said, not only for our local, but the diaspora and the investor.
And you launched it last year in Parliament. How would you say that it has grown since then?
It has grown tremendously. We have seen several thousand hits, so which means that persons are really paying attention to what is happening, the government. It also shows the transparency of the government, which is very important to us at this point in time. And so I can say that it has gone from leaps and bounds.
And of course, an important part of it would be the e-government aspect, where persons can go on and download forms, and no longer would they have to say, if I'm overseas and I need to get a passport form, I don't have to come to St. Kitts or have somebody send it to me via mail. I can now download it straight from the website there.
Well, yes, we have done that. There are several forms and applications that are on this site. Not only that, what is very interesting also is that if someone is overseas, for example, and they need to assist someone in their family who have an account of some sort, whether it's housing or whatever, with the government, they can now transact over the internet on this site. And so it has become extremely dynamic, which we are proud of. The thing is, it's to keep up with the information,
right,
which is a lot of information that we have to process. I
was just going to ask you about that because, of course, updating the website with current information, very important. What strategies are in place to get that done?
Well, of course, we have worked with our SKNS to really assist us in terms of getting some of this information out or keeping us relevant in terms of, and other departments which we call to find out exactly what is happening so that we can keep the information fresh and relevant in the minds of our citizens and persons abroad.
Minister, speaking of transparency in government, of course, there is collaboration with some of the more regional, more popular regional agencies, and one of them that I want to bring to your attention and to the public's attention, of course, is EGRIP, which is an OECS project. It stands basically for the Electronic Government Regional Integration Project. Tell the persons, Minister Philip, how the government is working with EGRIP and how it's going to impact their lives as an ordinary citizen on the street of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Well, what the EGRIP is really about is for governments or territories within the OECS Union, and in terms of best practices and the IT methodology come together. And what it really does, it helped us to consolidate our buying power. For example, in terms of equipment, instead of us going in as St. Kitts alone, we go in as an OECS, and it reduces price, and also assist us also in some of the legislative agenda in terms of IT. Of course, looking at best practices and looking at the fact that IT is relatively new in terms of the legislative process to really assist us in that regard and to put in new legislation forward.
Minister, of course, there is also, in terms of some of the strategies that government is using, a wide area network, which is referred to as a GWAN. Explain to the public about that as well.
First of all, when I came into government, one of the things that we have realized is that the government network, in my view, was a huge jigsaw puzzle. And so what the GWAN really is, what we call a government-wide area networks. What it do is connect government, connect every single ministry, every department as one entity, so that at least you can reduce costs, for example, across the network and improve the efficiency, whether it's internet, whether it's voice calls or what have you. So what we're trying to do, like I said before, is to establish government as one entity instead of having different networks across government, which doesn't make sense, and have one government.
How much would you say has been saved since this GWAN has been implemented?
In terms of numbers, well, we have realized cost saving. I think not only that, what we have done, we have found in several instances where there was no uniformity even within the billing structure within government. And that was something that we had to address early. And I can say to you that we have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars per year just implementing that system, and also putting in a new PBX here at government headquarters. What that will do, also, we are thinking about going into VoIP services, voice over internet protocol. And so that is what we are trying to achieve. We want to modernize government. In some respects, make government a paperless government and transact a lot of your information using the machines that you have on your desk.
Minister, any final comments that you'd like to leave the public with?
Well, what I'll say at this point in terms of IT, all of us have to be on board. It's a wave of the future. then that is why the department and the Ministry of Technology is so critical at this point in time. Because, like I said, when we started from the top of this interview, we have changed the focus from a beginner's program in terms of courses. We have realized that the colleges, the high school, they're doing that. What we are doing now is to establish a process where we can be more advanced and our people can use some of these tools that have been created or been taught to the advantage of developing ICT within the community, within the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
So a lot has been done, but we still have a long way to go.
Well, we still have a long, because IT is an ever-changing issue, and we want our citizens to keep abreast of technology, not just being end users. Because if you look at it also, what we have seen in terms of penetration rates, our broadband penetration rate is one of the highest in the Caribbean. I think it's about 40%. Our mobile penetration rate is well over, well, last time I saw was 154%. And so we have the capacity, our people have the tools in their hands. It's a matter of how they use them and how they can use them in an effective manner for them to be productive citizens.
Minister responsible for technology, Honorable Glenn Phillips, thank you very much for joining us today, sir.
No problem.
We're pleased that you joined us for this edition of SKNIS Perspectives. Join us every week at this same time on this radio station.
This program is produced by the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service.